The Vegas Golden Knights and Jack Eichel are off to red-hot starts, but did Vegas make a mistake by signing a controversial player? The New York Rangers and Vancouver Canucks look to get more harmony in their locker room and better results on the ice. But what about the latest trade rumors? We've got all that and a lot more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Vegas Golden Knights, Chris Gawlik. And Chris, you got to be happy with a 4-0-2 start through 6 games. And Vegas is leading the NHL in goals scored.
Yeah, Golden Knights and the New York Islanders separated by just 6 points on this young season, Gil. So just wanted to remind you about that. But yeah, no, listen, the Golden Knights, fast starts are the MO of Coach Cassidy since the Golden Knights and Bruce Cassidy have formed their partnership, I guess we can say it like that. First couple of games for Vegas, definitely a little slower starts, coughed up a lead against LA, and then that weird game against San Jose where Nedeljkovic felt like playing the puck weirdly and giving up a half-court jumper to Jack Eichel. But outside of that, in the Seattle game, you're starting to see improvements as far as a 60-minute effort by the Golden Knights, and obviously Saturday's game against the Calgary Flames was an example of such.
Is there anything that surprised you so far in this fast start?
I mean, people are going to say, look at Dorofeev, but that doesn't surprise me one bit. People are going to look at Eichel and his 15 points, more on that in the next segment. And, you know, that may be a bit of a surprise. Mark Stone and his 13 points. Hopefully he doesn't have a lingering injury as a result of an awkward fall last night. But really, there's not a lot of surprises. I mean, I guess maybe the third segment is a surprise also with the Carter Hart signing.
Right.
But the defense kind of holding it together might actually be the surprise without a healthy Alex Pietrangelo. Noah Hannafin's been out for the last few games, and the defense and the goaltending is getting it done. So that's probably my surprise right now.
You mentioned Jack Eichel. I mean, he's been on fire. What is he on, like 186-point pace or something like that?
If he skips the last 10 games.
Yeah, right. Talk to me about what has made him so effective this season so far.
It's progression, I think. It's the evolution of a superstar right now. Was very good since, he was very good since he's been in the league. Obviously, his situation in Buffalo was challenging as such as a young captain. Then you got the health issues, the neck, the distractions, and Vegas welcomes him with open arms, and ever since Vegas has traded for Jack Eichel and now extended Jack Eichel, it's just been a perfect relationship. It's a young relationship, but it's a perfect relationship. And Eichel just does everything right, from the community, from his on-the-ice habits, from his professionalism. And I can go on and on and on, but we only got 10 minutes here.
I would assume the key with him is keeping him healthy.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, I think 67, 70 games is about what it's been for the last couple of seasons. If he can find a way to be out there for close to 80 or even all 82 games, and especially with the situation he's in, we're looking to lock up some trophies for Jack in a few months.
Talk to me about Mitch Marner. I mean, he's quote-unquote only third on the team in scoring with 8 points through 6 games. But also a +7. How has he fit in, and what do you see from him so far?
His creativity on the ice is the first thing that stands out. We were at the game on Saturday, got to see Mitch Marner score his first 2 goals, and the crowd, of course, erupted for that. Awesome to see. Congrats to Mitch Marner for that. But his creativity in tight spaces. There's a lot of players, they get in trouble, chip and chase, old school 80s hockey, and nothing wrong with that by any means. That'll keep you in the league a long time. But Marner, it's almost like a quarterback looking off, 2 or 3 receivers and finding a way to extend the play. think that's what Mitch Marner does pretty well, and he just operates extremely well in tight spaces. There's no panic in his game, and it makes some dangerous passes that, if you're a coach or, not necessarily a type of thing you're going to teach your 12-year-olds to do, but he finds ways to get it done. And there are many aspects of the game that he is above. And I just went, 20 seconds, didn't even talk about the defensive aspects of his game and how good of a 200-foot player he actually is.
Are there any concerns? I mean, you're 4-0-2. I assume they wouldn't be major, but are there any concerns after the first 6 games?
There's always concerns. The defense, like I said earlier, has been playing well. How long will that last? That's a good question. I still feel that a player like Zach Whitecloud is playing a little bit above his weight class right now. He's a very solid third pairing defenseman. He's been up on the second pairing. You got a player like Ben Hutton filling in very well right now. Is Jeremy Lauzon? I mean, Lauzon can pound you. He can take a punch. I say take a punch. He hasn't been a very good fighter this season, but he can take a punch and stand up for his team. And small but noteworthy, Brandon Saad, someone that the Golden Knights extended for a season, kind of a surprise in Vegas. He's just a guy. I mean, for lack of a better term, he's been relatively dead weight for the first 6 games of the season.
Talk to me about the goaltending. I mean, the team is scoring so much, it doesn't need its goalies to be perfect. But statistically, neither Adin Hill nor Akia Schmid are off to outstanding statistical starts.
No, Schmid is an 8.79. Hill is an 8.82, 2.86 goals against Hill, 3 for Schmid. Hill's last couple of starts have been fine. Even, he got injury or pulled early. You can say however you want. Tuesday, the last time he played the Flames. But his game, I believe, on last Saturday against the Seattle Kraken was fine, and he had a good game against the Flames on Saturday evening, this past Saturday. So Hill is going to be fine. Hill is a product of the defense in front of him, and if the defense in front of him, although we talked about concerns a few moments ago, if the defense in front of him is clicking, Hill is just fine. Hill has the ability to steal a game here or there, but definitely not among the elite goaltenders like a Jake Ottinger, like a Shesterkin, like a Logan Thompson. There you go, BGK fans. Had to get one in there.
A little controversy in the signing of Carter Hart.
Little. Okay. Yeah.
Little. The signing of Carter Hart to a PTO. Your thoughts about the move, and do you think he'll actually make it to Vegas and play in the NHL again?
Last question first. 100% yes. Carter Hart is going to be on this Golden Knights roster, signed to a PTO right now, just to kind of let the chips fall and see what happens. I mean, yes, you got to make sure that the guy can actually play the position. Yes, you got to make sure he's going to be in hockey shape. Those are the first 2 boxes that need to be checked. But every comment from Hart to Cassidy to Jack Eichel to Mark Stone, yes, he's going to be on this team. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to be on this team. You asked about my thoughts. Very short version. I am okay with Carter Hart being employed in the National Hockey League. I am okay with the Vegas Golden Knights employing Carter Hart. I am concerned about the PR handling of the Carter Hart signing. Very national story. Mark Lazaros, the national with the Athletic, if I'm not mistaken. He asked a simple question to Noah Hannafin maybe 3 weeks ago in the BGK locker room. And unfortunately, the team axed him from the facility and yanked his credentials for that evening. So the Golden Knights' handling of this has been strange. You did not see Kelly McCrimmon, George McPhee, or owner Bill Foley address the Carter Hart signing. And even though Kelly McCrimmon, like when Coach Cassidy was hired, McCrimmon sits right next to Coach Cassidy in the press conference. McCrimmon calls press conferences to discuss trade deadline acquisitions and extensions and all sorts of things. I don't think it was the best PR move not to have someone from the front office addressing the Carter Hart situation.
What would you have liked them to have said?
It's not what I would have liked them to say. It's what I would have liked them not to say. So the Golden Knights put a statement out there about the team's core values. And again, the Carter Hart situation, I know there's a split as far as perspectives about what happened on that evening, and that's for people to debate among themselves. I'm not going to debate that. But the Golden Knights do have some players on their roster and a member of the coaching staff that do have a troubled history. And it's hard to look at core values when you have those things going on within the locker room.
Fair enough. Chris, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
For sure. You can check out the Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast on YouTube and anywhere you catch your podcast. Myself and Tony Cordasco, we have words.
All right, Chris, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401k, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. I love the fact that if you and your significant other share accounts, Monarch can help you both stay on the same page. And Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where my money's going and how to make it work harder for me. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Canucks, Trevor Beggs. And Trevor, another nice win for the Canucks on Sunday. What has been the biggest reasons for their early season success?
Oh, the biggest reason for their success has been the guys between the pipes, Gil. It's been Thatcher Demko and it's been Kevin Lankinen. And, Thatcher Demko for his starts this season, he's given the team a chance to win each and every night. And there hasn't been a bad showing yet for him. There hasn't been a bad goal against for him. It's just been a rock solid performances for Thatcher Demko in net so far. 4 games played. I believe he's only got 1 loss in there as well. And Kevin Lankinen, he had 1 human start against the St. Louis Blues, about 4 expected goals against, let in 4 goals. And then he really gave the Canucks a chance to win with another heroic performance against the Blackhawks. So, they've had, far above average goaltending in 5 of the 6 games so far. And, that's been the big reason for the success, man, because up until the game against the Capitals today, the Canucks have basically been starting games like they've been hungover. They're like me trying to stumble into work after pounding back a few the night before. It's just they're just asleep at the wheel for the first 20 minutes, and a couple. They were down 2-0 against Dallas, 2-0 against Chicago, came back and won those games. But man, oh man, the slow starts were becoming a bit of a problem until they put 3 on the board in the first against Washington here on Sunday. So hopefully, things are turning in the right direction.
And yet they get off to the fast start, and then they have to hang on in the third period.
Yeah, exactly. But, it's hard to fault the team. Again, Adam Foote's talked about it. I'm sure every head coach has talked about it, the condensed schedule this year. But it was a little extra crazy for the Canucks. I think, on the graphic for Sportsnet, the broadcast for the Canucks, it was like 3 games in 65 hours, right? Like they play Thursday night, they play Friday night, and then they play Sunday morning. That's a lot of games in a short period of time, right? So, you kind of figured they were going to run out of gas, not only run out of gas, but they started missing bodies too, right? Brock Besser all of a sudden out of the game on Sunday. Not much of an update on that. Hard to know when there's not many guys on the road. Filipino, of course, takes the hit from Tom Wilson, potentially another concussion. Like that's a massive blow to the Canucks. Would be a huge story if he ends up being out long term. Jonathan Lekermacki, our young rookie, gets injured, and then Teddy Bluger gets injured. Now it's like, oh my God, Gil, here we go again. So those are some things to monitor with the Canucks. I mean, 4 guys that were in the lineup at some point this season could all be out of the lineup as this road trip continues on here.
You mentioned the goaltending, but it also seems like the team has played good defense in front of the goaltenders. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think there was such a high bar for the defense, Gil, you look at this team on paper and it's the offense is kind of middling, but the top 5 defense and the goaltending. To be honest, the defense has been a little more permissive than you would have liked to believe. I think even Quinn Hughes, Phil Pronik have had a bit of a slow start. Tyler Myers, he played great against Washington, but he had some chaotic moments earlier in the season. With Hughes, Hronek, and Marcus Pettersson, there's a solid top 3 formation there, right? So you can believe in those guys to figure it out, but it has been a bit of a slow start for some of the top guys. And the Canucks are really rotating out 2 guys who are pretty much rookies in this lineup, right? So Derek Forbort was a bottom pairing defenseman. He's injured. And now they're playing the other Elias Pettersson and Victor Mancini, who had both of them had really fantastic preseasons, but they're both still, relatively young defensemen. Victor Mancini came into the season with 31 games played. DPD came into this season with 28 games played. Like, these are young NHL defensemen. Adam Foote's had to get creative. Like, he's kind of double shifting Hughes and Hronek and pairing Hronek with DPD and pairing Hughes with Mancini. So I think it's been a bit of a work in progress so far, but thankfully they've had the goaltending to bail them out. And again, not like the defense has been bad, but if you look at the stats, it's kind of been a bit below average, and they're allowing more shots and chances than you'd probably like to give up.
Is there any player early on in the season who's been a pleasant surprise so far to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm going to shout out the Calder Cup line, the 4th line, baby. Let's go. These guys always deserve some love, but the Canucks have had a 4th line of over the last few games of Archdeep Baines, Surrey, BC native, local boy, Max Sasson, and Linus Karlsson. And you got to credit Patrick Allvin and his staff for finding these guys, for signing these guys. Ironically, Baines and Karlsson were 2 of the first signings Allvin made when he came to Vancouver. But none of these guys have high pedigrees, right? Like Archie Baines and Max Sasson are undrafted. Linus Karlsson, a 3rd-round pick that we got in the Jonathan Dahlin trade way back when. It's taken him a while to develop. But these guys, they were the top line for the Canucks AHL team, the line that helped them win a championship in the AHL. But I think it was fair to have some skepticism that they were actually going to work out in the NHL level. But, not only have they been successful so far, Gil, but in that game against the Dallas Stars, the first game they played together, they single-handedly turned the momentum for the Canucks. Like, the Canucks are just getting their asses handed to them in the first period against Dallas. All of a sudden, this, Calder Cup line comes out, has a great shift. They end up, contributing for the game, the go-ahead goal against the Stars, the game-tying goal against the Blackhawks. So they've been a very pleasant surprise. The other guy that stands out would be Philip Hedl. He had 3 goals in his first 4 games. But of course, let's hope and pray that Philip Hedl doesn't have another concussion, because it didn't look good for the hit on Sunday.
Yeah, never like to mess around with concussions, that's for sure. How about special teams? It seems like you're kind of middle in the pack on both the power play and the penalty kill. Any concerns there?
I'd say I have less concerns now, to be honest. I know the PKs have been kind of giving up goals, but for the most part, I thought they've done a pretty good job of not allowing too much pressure. It looks like they haven't given up a lot of chances, when you start digging into the numbers a bit. I think, to me, one of the biggest surprises on both special teams, and maybe this is another guy who's impressed so far, is Connor Garland. The smallest forward in the NHL. I'm telling you right now, he is the Canucks' best forward. And for this team, it would be better if Elias Pettersson or Brock Besser ends up being one of those guys as the season goes on. But since the beginning of last season, Connor Garland has been the Canucks' best forward. He leads the team in points. He's skated more at even strength than any other Canuck. And now he's the top penalty-killing forward on this team. I think the loss of Pius Suter was a pretty big one in the offseason. I still don't love the idea of giving up Pius Suter and adding Evander Kane to this lineup. I think it's been, outside of a couple plays, a bit of a shaky start for Kane. But Connor Garland's now on the first penalty killing unit, doing pretty damn good in that role. And to start the season, he was on power play 2. They quickly move him up to power play 1, and boom, they get 3 power play goals in 2 games there against Dallas and Chicago. So I think things are trending in the right direction there. I think Elias Pettersson's starting to show a bit more on the power play as well. But I think on the power play too, like, you have Quinn Hughes quarterback, and then you have 4 guys who really are all contributing equally, right? With Besser, with DeBrusque, with Garland, with Pettersson. So again, special teams might have to be a differentiator for this group, especially if they're going to be missing guys long-term up front at 5-on-5. And I have the confidence that they can be above average on the PK and on the power play.
Besides injuries, what are your biggest concerns early on this season?
Yeah, besides injuries, that's I'm glad you said that. No, I think for me, it's the offense, and specifically Elias Pettersson, right? Like, can Elias Pettersson bounce back? It's something that we've talked about ad nauseum on Locked On Canucks. I don't think there's an NHL player that has more pressure on him than Elias Pettersson, to be honest. And in the first 3 games, it looked like the same old Pettersson, the same guy that was bobbling the puck, looking kind of slow, making mistakes. I like to think that things changed in that Dallas game. A puck ricochets off his stick, goes into his own net. And you're thinking like 3 bad games, a goal. He basically has an own goal when he hasn't scored yet this season. But I think he's kind of turned the tide at least over the past 3 games. Maybe it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. I believe he only has 1 goal and 3 points in 6 games so far. But it looks like things are trending in the right direction. And look, I know there's guys that will point at the fancy stats and be like, "Oh, look, Pettersson's playing better than you think." Even though like through the first 2 games, he really didn't look good. But it finally seems like things are trending in the right direction. Some of that elusiveness is coming back. Almost scored a highlight reel goal in overtime against Chicago and gets stymied by Spencer Knight. So if Pettersson can bounce back, I think there's enough depth to at least be average offensively. And that's the recipe for the Canucks. They need to be one of the best defensive teams in the NHL, have one of the fewest numbers of goals against with that tandem, and just be average offensively. But to me, it's still a bit of a concern if they can actually be average.
Trevor, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast, where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
Well, Gil, always good to talk to you, man. Keep taking care of my boy Bo. I see him wearing the Iron Man mask now. So There you go, man. Iron Bo. You can find Locked On Canucks on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. You can find me at Trev Beggs on Twitter. You can find Locked On Canucks on Twitter as well.
All right, Trevor, always a pleasure. Thank you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays to increase my odds. I've tried player props, and I've even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, place that first $5 bet and you'll get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. So visit FanDuel.com, check it out today. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New York Rangers, John Chik. And John, what is going on with the Rangers this season? One game they look like world beaters, and the next game they look like they can't get out of their own way. What's been going on here?
I know there's this perception right now that the Rangers have been inconsistent to start the season. And I guess in terms of like just going by, final scores and statistics and certain, players on the team, maybe not necessarily playing to the back of their hockey card, so to speak. But honestly, other than opening night, I think they've actually been very consistent to start this season. There's been a newfound emphasis on playing strong defensive hockey. And I'm kind of like hit or miss with the metrics. I could take it or leave it. I don't want hockey to become like a computer simulation. But one stat that I saw that definitely checks is that the Rangers, at least as of the other night, were first in the NHL in high danger scoring chances against. And that, when you watch these games, you can tell that that's true. The Rangers have really clamped down when it comes to defending the front of their net, supporting both of their goalies, limiting odd man chances, and even on the PK, doing a great job there as well. So they've been very consistent when it comes to playing their game, playing a smart defensive style of hockey. The one area where they haven't been consistent, it's not creating scoring chances. They've been doing that every single game, believe it or not. And I know some of these final scores, you wouldn't necessarily think that. They've gotten goalied a couple of times. But I think even more importantly is that they are creating scoring chances every single game, and high danger scoring chances. It just hasn't always shown up in the box score. But that's been awesome to see. And it was nice to see the dam finally break, so to speak, against Montreal the other night, down 2-0, 4 minutes into the game. I can tell you, Gil, 100%, if this is last season, the Rangers roll over and they die and they lose that game in an absolute landslide. The fact that they're on the road against this fast rising Montreal team, 4-1 to start the season, and they come back in their barn and just stick to their game. And, dominate might be a strong word for the third period, but they clearly had the better of play. It was 20 excellent minutes of hockey for the Rangers, and they deserved to win that game, and they got the win. So it was nice to see. It's very gratifying to see them finally win a game that they should win, even though that hadn't been happening in the handful of games, before that.
chemistry was a big issue for this team last year. Changes were made during the offseason. Talk to me about what you've seen chemistry-wise through 7 games so far.
Yeah, it seems a lot better. To go back to the game last night, Rangers are down 2-1. They were chasing a goal for, a good chunk of this game, and Sam Carrick gets into a fight against Jack-Eye, and he's obviously a big dude, and we all thought it was going to be him against Rempe, and it ends up being him against Carrick instead, and Carrick hung in there really tough. I would call the fight overall, probably a draw. That really fired the Rangers up and got them going a little bit. It's just been nice to see more intensity, more fire out of some of these players. Even somebody like Mika Zibanejad. We're going back, quite a ways now to the first couple games of the season. But there was a game where they scored shorthanded, a great feed by Sam Carrick to set it up. And Mika's fired up and he's pointing at him and, bleep yeah and all this stuff. Dude, I didn't see anything even resembling that from Mika Zibanejad for 82 games last season. So that's been cool to see. I think the choice of JT Miller to captain this team was the correct choice. It's not without risk, because we know, for lack of a better term, he can be a little bit of a hothead. We've seen that at different stops throughout his NHL career. But, honestly, I said this on my show, you go 85 years with one Stanley Cup, I think it gets to a point where you want to roll the dice a little bit and you want to take a calculated risk. And for me, making JT Miller the captain was that. He plays the style of hockey, that north-south game, that physical game that the Rangers are chasing. My understanding is they're pretty near the top of the NHL right now in team hits. And it's been good, man. You had Vladislav Gavrikov. That was the big, free agent addition. He's really strengthened the Ranger blue line as well. And that group has held up very well, despite being, somewhat untested and kind of pieced together, over the last year or so. That it's been very solid so far.
So what's going on now with the trade rumors concerning Artemi Panarin? Is there substance to this? And if so, why?
I mean, you can kind of connect the dots and see why. He is in the last year of his contract. And my understanding is that the Rangers approached him about a possible contract extension, during the offseason here, but it doesn't sound like talks really went all that far. Maybe the Rangers want him to take a team-friendly deal, both in terms of years and dollars, and maybe Panarin wasn't so keen on doing that. Maybe Panarin just wants this year to play out and see how everything goes. In terms of trading him, though, I know it's the last year of his contract. If we get to the trade deadline and the Rangers are terrible, I don't think this is going to happen, but if they're terrible and they're out of the playoff chase, by all means, you go to Panarin, you approach him about waiving his no-move clause, and you see if you can get something done. Because in a situation like that, you can't lose him for nothing. But right now, the way things stand, I mean, we're just getting underway here. And the Rangers, they didn't go for a rebuild. They went for a retooling. They've kind of, reimagined this roster, so to speak, and they've put everything together. Doing all that and not rebuilding, but then turning around and trading your most talented player, the guy that's led your team in points every single season since he's been here, that doesn't make any sense. That would go completely against everything that the Rangers did in the offseason. So I think right now you're kind of in wait and see mode. I'm kind of comfortable doing that as a Ranger fan. You see how this season goes. When it gets to the deadline, see where you're at in the standings. Do we keep him? Do we try to trade him? And if you keep him, you go through the season, you hope for the best if you make it to the playoffs, and then you cross that free agent bridge when you get to it in the offseason. I mean, it's not a situation where I feel like you absolutely must re-sign him, but I wouldn't be so quick to just brush him aside either, especially when you see some of these big free agents around the league that were going to be UFAs this upcoming offseason, and a whole bunch of them have signed. Eichel, McDavid, Kaprizov, those guys are all already off the board. So it's an interesting situation to track right now, but I don't think anything's imminent, and I would be shocked if the Rangers were to trade Panarin in the short term here.
What are the keys to a successful season for the Rangers?
I mean, honestly, I think just kind of continuing to do what you're doing, support your goalies. There have been too many times in the past where I feel like it's kind of been an over-reliance, certainly on Igor Shesterkin. I mean, we've seen that time and time again, but I feel like just kind of, sticking with this defensive-minded hockey, this brand of hockey that the Rangers are currently playing. And I think also, and I talked about this the other day on my show, one of my more recent episodes, is that I can appreciate the fact that Mike Sullivan, as the Ranger coach, is actually reacting to things that he sees. There was a game a couple of nights ago, I think it might have been the Toronto game, where the fourth line of Edstrom, Carrick, and Rempe, they really played well. They were forechecking hard. They were creating all kinds of chaos. They were creating some scoring chances, and Sullivan actually reacted to it. He increased their ice time. We've seen those guys, playing late in games because they've really stepped up their game thus far this season. I think something else that's going to happen, Matthew Robertson. Now, he's not a household name, but he was a former second-round pick by the Rangers 6 years ago, if you can believe that. And only now, at the start of this season, has he, first of all, he made the team, which was kind of surprising. And now he's actually playing well and maybe on his way to become an AHL regular. And I think he's going to stick in the lineup for the foreseeable future going forward. And with other coaches that the Rangers had, like to me, it's so obvious that he should stay in the lineup, even when Susie comes back and you make Vakanainen a healthy scratch. I feel like other Ranger coaches that we've had in recent years maybe wouldn't have done that. You know, the common sense would just kind of elude them, or they'd see something that maybe we don't all see somehow. But I just like the way that things are kind of flowing right now. And everything the Rangers have done so far this season, whether it's focusing more on defense or whether it's time on the ice or line combinations or personnel decisions, it all makes sense, you know? And sometimes it's the little things, especially after the kind of season that the Rangers had last year. You know, this is very, very refreshing through 7 games so far this season.
All right, so some early reasons for optimism. John, I know you'll have it covered every step of the way. Why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you know, wherever you're watching this or listening to this, you can find Locked On New York Rangers there. We're on YouTube. We're on every audio streaming platform that you can probably even think of. And as far as, you know, me, you can find me on social media, on Twitter at jchik17, at jchik17. So, yeah, give us a follow and talk some hockey. It'll be fun.
John, always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Gil. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank my guest, Trevor Beggs of Locked On Canucks. I want to thank Chris Gawlik of Locked On Vegas Golden Knights. And I want to thank John Chik of Locked On New York Rangers for joining me today. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget, we are here every day, Monday through Saturday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the hockey world. So hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.